Uh, my name is Paula McCain, and I'm a recovery business advisor of for North Central Texas Small Business Development Center. We're the leading provider of assistance for small businesses in North Central Texas. We are grant funded, and because of that, we can provide our services such as webinars like this to you at no cost. And welcome to our Money Habits of Successful Entrepreneurs webinar. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat room and we will talk about them after the presentation. I'd like to present to you our teacher today is Rebecca Schultz. Rebecca has been helping business owners to access money and financial education for many years. She is the founder and executive loan consultant of Centerlock Funding. Rebecca?
All right, thank you. Good morning. And I absolutely love this conversation. In fact, if I could spend all my day on this one conversation, I would be the happiest person you would have ever met. And that would be kind of scary, to be honest with you. All right, so let's go ahead and get going. Oh, hang on. That button overlapped with my presentation button. Hang on. It likes to. All right, here we go. All right, so we are exploring money habits of successful entrepreneurs, right? So hopefully when you saw that title, you were thinking, what, Richard Branson, Elon Musk, right? These are people historically that have done really well for themselves and they seem to have it all figured out, right? If we just tap into their brains for a moment, maybe we would have it all figured out too. Well, I'm actually taking this conversation in a slightly different direction because, quite honestly, each one of us have the answers to what we're trying to achieve all inside of us, right? We really just need to be able to understand what needs to come through and how we approach that information and then put it together to get the end result. And so that's really what we're going to be talking about today. Now, my name is Rebecca Schultz. I am the founder and executive loan consultant for Centerlock, right? And I have over 25 years of lending experience, right? I like to tell people I didn't grow up wanting to be a loan officer, right? That wasn't even on my like things possibility list. But loans, they found me, and I'm glad they did because I have a lot of fun helping people understand the money side. Right, so let's go ahead and start with a quote. I love quotes, and this one is by one of those famous money people, right? Mr. Tony Robbins. He says, "Money cannot be cared about. It is just a tool that you use because if you don't use it, it will use you." All right, so instinctively, we're like, okay, Tony, I get this. Money is a tool, right? But there's a lot more to it, right? And so that whole phrase, because if you don't use it, it will use you. That's what we're going to be exploring today. All right, so the agenda. I have this presentation broken out into the following categories. We're going to talk about the money manager. All right. And then we're going to go into exploring money beliefs. We all have them. You may not realize it, but there is something going on in between those ears that's helping you make decisions. We need to understand that a little bit better. We're going to go over a concept that's relatively new in our Western culture. It's not new to those Eastern folks, okay? But the Western culture is just now getting on this whole money EQ. And so for those that don't really recognize that EQ, that's the emotional quotient, right? There's something happening with our relationship with money. And we're going to start to understand that a little bit better. Then we're going to move into understanding the money tool. We just heard Tony talk about it, right? He says if we don't learn to use this tool right, it's going to turn around and use us. So we're going to figure that out. And then we're going to end the conversation on the end goal, which is becoming your own money expert, right? How do you make those decisions to be successful? We just have to go through this path before we get there. All right, so let's start. Let's start at the money manager conversation. I love this keyboard, right? Because whenever I started in finance, we really did have like typewriters that had numbers on them, and we were really good at keying in numbers, right? It's old fashioned. But when you think of money and you think of managing it, I want you to also connect it to this theory, all right? That money and mission are connected. Right? So as an entrepreneur, as a small business owner, you wake up every day, I know you do, with this idea that there's a goal that you have in mind, right? We're going to equate that goal or what your business that you're in, what you're trying to achieve, that's your mission. And knowing where your money's going, right? Where you're directing your money, you can almost think of this as like a lifeline of support. Knowing where that's going should line up to your mission and vision for your business. All right, so a way I like to think about it is your budget, how you spend your money, should directly correlate to your company's mission and that vision. Are you achieving the end goals? All right, now, as we're spending money, right, as we have resources and we're using them, we need to be very intentional about our vendor relationships, who we're working with. Oh my goodness, this one conversation I could spend an entire day on. I'm serious. Think about it. Do you enjoy the people you're working with? I do. I enjoy the people thoroughly that I work with. But a lot of us can't say that, right? And so, are you spending money where you know where it's going and there's that intentional aspect to it, right? And are you making investments in your future that are intentional? Right? So remember Tony's quote, right? You need to learn how to use the money tool or it will use you, right? There's this part of we give up control over our money when we're not being intentional about these relationships. I want you to keep that in mind, all right? Remember, we are in control. And so we have to make sure that we're directing that money in a manner that's going to connect to what we're trying to achieve. Now, there is a whole communication around money. There is, whether you buy into it or you don't. We are commuting every day about money and dollars, right? And we're doing this in marketing and advertising. We're creating what we would call customer value uh, propositions within our businesses. Money is everywhere. And if we are not clear on what we're trying to communicate, the value for which we're trying to do business, right, then we are going to have problems. Right? So clear communication is going to equal clear opportunities and results. So are you being clear about your money, right, and how that connects to your mission? As we end this little slide, I want you to think about that question, and that's going to be one of those little homeworks you're going to leave the workshop with. Are you clear about your communication on your money and how that translates to opportunities for your business? All right, so it's easy to take this information into stride and say, yeah, that kind of makes sense, and then just gloss over it and not dive into it real deep. But I'm going to go ahead and ask for you to guys to like follow me on a journey. I'm going to give you an example and I'm going to line up what we just talked about and then what we'll continue talking about in a real life situation. Now, all of us have been around for a while, right? We've seen COVID, we've felt COVID, we've lived through COVID. Let's talk about a business that's struggling right now with making the right money decisions as they're coming out of COVID. All right, so we've got Misty. Misty's a small boutique marketing firm. Last year, Misty was able to survive due to one large client. Now, that one large client made up 60% of her revenue. We call that in the investment world a concentration. Now, the client was demanding and challenging to work with, right? But that client kept asking Misty to do work that wasn't ideal for her company. And it wasn't in line with what her company was trying to offer. She was just able to do it, right? So Misty liked the steady paycheck, right? And she has accommodated that client, right? She's made them happy. But the workload is starting to become more than what Misty can bear. She's looking at her energy and effort and her happiness. And she's looking at that client and they're not in line. So Missy has no time because she's got this commitment with this client to find other opportunities that might be better suited towards that vision of her company. She's stuck. She's locked into that relationship. All right, so her finances are decent because remember, she's collecting money, but she's spending a lot of money on software she doesn't use consistently because remember that client relationship isn't 100% fit and she wants to go do something else. So there's a misalignment there between her money and what her vision is trying to achieve. Right? In fact, when you drill into her finances, a lot of her expenses are off from what she projected. Right now, her most profitable work is not coming from that large client. So the question is, what should Misty do? I'm just going to let that land for a second because I think all of us can really relate with this type of understanding, right? Oftentimes when we're in business, especially through some uncertain times, we'll latch on to work or certain types of work that we know that we're good at and we can get paid on. But we're not really fully paying attention to what we're trying to achieve and what that full mission and vision is, right? There's some misalignment happening. And so if we were to look at Misty's numbers, I would actually beg to differ that that misalignment, that not following what she intended on offering, it's costing her a lot more money than that whole 60% of that revenue, right? Like that diversion of her attention and energy could be really risking the success of her business. Now, does Misty have what she needs in order to make tough decisions? I don't know. It's a good question, right? So let's explore that more and see what can happen in cases like Misty's. All right, so it leads us into this conversation around money beliefs. And if you had showed up earlier and you were listening to our banter early on, right, I was talking about the fact that oftentimes how we understand money and today how we operate with our money is vastly different because we're holding on to certain beliefs around money. Remember, money is just a tool. We're holding on to these beliefs that are operating in the background, and they're really kind of having us see the world in a way that may not be 100% true, right? And we don't realize it. So let's explore that a little bit more. We have internal programming. You can't help it, right? You were born into a world which was with a family that was most likely a cultural belief behind it, right? And we adopted or inherited money beliefs early on, right? Before we had the ability to really question it. It's now running like a ghost in the machine in our subconscious. Now, if you don't believe me here, I want you to go to the grocery store, all right? And just as you're about to check out, just stare at the candy. Okay, just stare at the candy. And I'm sure you'll be able to hear your parents telling you, don't buy it, right? Get away from it. That's just one example I'm sure most of us can remember. But we are told certain things as children, and we don't question it going into adulthood. So limited beliefs focused around money, right? I'm going to give you some examples of these limited beliefs, right? One, money is limited. Like, oh, don't spend it all. You'll be sad when it's gone, right? You'll regret spending that money on that whatever, right? Okay. Second, what if money is hard to get? Right? You have to work really hard for that money. You don't want to waste it all in one space. If you can resonate with any of those statements, right, then you grew up in a family or culture where there were some limited beliefs around money. Money was limited, right? Money was a scarcity to be treated with a certain amount of anxious, watchful eye. Okay. All right. Now, I want to give you the opposite, right? Healthy beliefs about money. We all want to have healthy beliefs about money. So here's some examples. Money is infinite. It is all around you. You only have to be able to identify new opportunities and the money will follow, right? Or how about this? Money should work hard for you. You don't have to work hard for it. Are you investing your money so that you're getting a higher return? Right? Money working hard for you, not you working hard for it. Or how about this? You cannot not afford to invest in the right people and resources to make you successful, right? I would wager that far fewer of us have had the healthy beliefs about money, which, if we think long and hard, we can connect it to some real life situational experiences, right? We can understand that money can earn us income. We can understand that having resources and the right people can make us successful as business owners. We don't just necessarily think about it straight out the gate. All right. So internal programming. Now, if you're trying to figure out how do I know or unbury all these unconscious money beliefs, right? Like, how do I know them? I'm going to give you an example. It's really simple. I want you to go out there, find a kid, shake them down, right? Find their Monopoly game. We were joking about toys earlier, and here we go. We're still talking about toys. Find your Monopoly game because you can do what we would consider the Monopoly game test. Test yourself around your money beliefs. As you're playing with games or running through situations in your mind, look for similar habits, right? They will rise up in you. Do you have fears of spending that money? Are you uncertain of what you should do? Should you buy the property or not, right? Should you go to school or not? These are things that game brings out in us. And so explore those feelings. And with any type of personal insight, I like to say that we just need to shine a light on those uncomfortable moments, right? So if we worry about spending money on something as simple as maybe that gum at the end of that checkout line, right? Why? Why are we worried about that? We might have tons of money in our account. Why is that a problem for us? Why are those feelings coming up? And as soon as you start to explore those feelings, you'll be able to understand what's happening subconsciously. And believe it or not, that little tiny action, that little tiny fear could actually be magnified in your life in other ways. So understanding that and being able to maximize how we use money and being intentional, right? It helps us change the game. It helps us rewrite that script. And by being conscious of it, we can be more intentional on the side of achieving those goals and missions and treating money as the true tool that it is, right? Instead of being run by fear and doubt. Okay. So now we're going to segue into a conversation. Remember, I told you this is not something that we hear a lot about in the Western world, which is money EQ. It's the emotional intelligence. All right, so emotions run so much in our lives, right? Why can't money be just another example of how what's happening inside of us plays out before our very eyes? Well, there is a direct connection. That is what both research and science has told us. How you play that money game or your feelings around getting or spending money, that will drive your future success. All right. And so you need to ask yourself why you have those feelings. What's happening? Is it because of a direct experience, or is it maybe one of those family experiences? Earlier, Paula and I were talking about having family members that had gone through the Depression, right? That was a serious time. Families were starving, right? It scarred so much of really the world, not just Americans, but the full world. And that experience and how they saw the world and what they felt like they could do, the opportunities that were available were limited because of that experience. So, was this a direct experience or is this something that you're picking up on from your family, right? That's no longer a threat that you have to worry about now. You really need to be able to get clear on what's happening internally, right? And your understanding before you'll be able to change any of those negative beliefs. Now, when I say that, you might take me at just face value and say, okay, that's great, Rebecca. right? I got to change my emotions. So maybe I'm scared of spending money, or maybe I'm scared of using money in a certain way because I feel like I'm going to be judged, or there's something happening internally. I get that, right? But change is not so easy. Like how do I become more, mindful of investments, and how do I turn into that Richard Branson, right? That is change, and change is not easy for anyone, right? You have to explore those emotions and really make sure that any unexplored emotions don't keep you from making clear, thought out money decisions. Now, when I say clear, thought out money decisions, I'm not talking about the candy bar at the end of the counter there. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about your business, right? And what you want to achieve in life. I'm talking about the fact that I have seen grown individuals with fantastic opportunities in front of them just get weak at the knees, get cold feet before they sign that contract. They know that they'll be successful. They've done the numbers, they've done the forecasting, but they can't seem to be able to commit to the future because that type of negative feeling is stopping them, right? It's this fear that keeps them from executing. They'll know they'll be successful, right? It's that difference in that mind where the logical mind knows one thing, but then there's that very human element, right? That fear or doubt steps in and interrupts that pattern and stops you from being successful. So I want you guys to think about aligning your money very clearly with that mission and vision, and knowing that if you have some unexpected negative feelings, right, that EQ component, you really need to try to explore and find out, is there any true danger that you haven't already addressed? And is that keeping you from being successful? All right, so improving your money emotional intelligence is really not that difficult, right? We could joke about how it would be difficult and it could take you years and years to get beyond. But quite honestly, this is something, as long as you are actively looking for it, right? It's like that bad penny, it'll turn up. It'll turn up as soon as you're open to seeing it. So there's 5 negative emotions around money that have been identified. The first is anxiety, right? It's this uneasiness, it's this discomfort connected to spending that money, right? Or letting go of that money, or even taking that money. Some of us have anxiety over having money. Maybe that means to us that we weren't true to our goals, right? Maybe we're just firm on doing it ourselves, right? Again, limited beliefs. Anxiety shows up in different ways. The second negative emotion is fear, just plain fear. Fear of losing relationships, right? Fear of love, fear of loss itself. If I make the money, I might lose the money, and there is loss, right? Humans naturally have an aversion to anything that brings up fear, right? It's the fight or flight situation. It's running at the back of our head, right? We can't turn it off. Well, we can. It's just very hard. So running from fear is not going to be the answer here. You must shine that light, or really try to understand why you're afraid. And as the adult looking at the new situation, reason that out with yourself. Is there anything to be afraid of that you haven't already thought about? All right, so the third negative emotion is going to be doubt. I know people every day that are just overcome by doubt and they don't make decisions, right? They can't pull that trigger. It's a feeling of being unprepared for new challenges. Doubt comes from others around you, or not even from others around you, what you think other people around you will say, right? And it holds you back from achieving anything. It kind of keeps you in this pattern because you just can't really own that type of responsibility, right? That doubt. And honestly, in adults, we see doubt overshadow them, and maybe their parents are long gone, right? They're not there. It's the voices, what they think is going to be said about them, that ends up running them rather than actual real doubt. It's very, very interesting. Okay, so the fourth negative emotion is going to be guilt. Now, if you think that you're beyond guilt, think again. I promise you, this, I feel like this resides in all good Americans. All right? They have been dealt a healthy amount of guilt growing up, whether it's from their family or it's from society. It is there, right? This is this need for approval from others, right? You want somebody to tell you you're going to be okay, or that you need that type of confidence. It's a good idea, right? Oh, you should definitely go for it. We believe in you. Right. In fact, oh my goodness, you could probably go out and find that on t-shirts somewhere, right? We believe in you. Don't let the guilt paralyze your personal progress, right? You, in some ways, can't look to others as an entrepreneur for that type of approval. You're the one that's forging the roads there, right? You're the one that's building the future. That approval is not always going to be there, and we know that, right? Why are we looking for it? All right, and the final negative emotion is just self-neglect. Now, self-neglect can masquerade as being humility, right? So I want you guys to know that. Think long and hard. But if this is a lack of self-worth or lack of self-esteem, saying that you just, it's too hard, it's too much, you can't do it, right? You just never be able to accomplish that. Think again, right? That can be a form of self-neglect, right? As long as you have the resources and you have the plan and you can muster the support, really anything's possible. It's an easy card to play. All right, so now that we've identified those four negative emotions, you're a little more aware of what could be going on internally as you were looking at these decisions. The challenge is really understanding why you have those negative emotions, right? And then being able to get around them with logic, right? Knowing helps you get through it. So you resolve those negative feelings. What I want to say is that remember the money tool that we were talking about? Money is an amplifier. And you hear this over and over again, right? If somebody wins the lotto one day, that if they're a mean person, well, guess what? They're going to, misuse that money, right? It just makes them more of a mean person. If somebody is a caring person who loves to do things for others, guess what? Money to them, they're going to expound their care to everybody around them. Money doesn't make you good or bad, right? Money is just a tool. Money amplifies what already exists. So if you're trying to resolve those negative feelings, right, then you're going to be able to open yourself up to opportunities. One, you'll be able to see the opportunities more clearly. You'll be able to receive those opportunities. Now, if you've ever studied that law of attraction, remember that gratitude and thankfulness, it creates a certain type of energy, and certain things come to you a little bit easier. People are more open to you. Maybe that's, physical appearance. Maybe it's expression, communication that changes. But getting rid of the negative feelings, it almost by default creates that openness to be able to receive. And it allows for you to take action, right? You're not stuck in those limited feelings. You can take action and move forward. All right, so the problem is a lot of us try to avoid money. We may think we're not avoiding money, right? But because of these negative feelings that we want to avoid, fear, doubt, right, rejection, because we're trying to avoid the feelings, we're essentially pushing the money away from us, right? And that blocks us from able to be the very best we can at this money tool game. Right, so the goal is to try to be really careful, thoughtful, and create money habits and relationships that allow for us to align and fulfill our vision and mission that we have set aside. All right, how was that? Was that pretty good? I know this is easier by concept than by practice, okay? All right, now I'm going to introduce a new concept to you. It's called the flow of money. I love this concept, all right? So think of money like a river, right? River brings life, it brings abundance, right? That you can put a boat on that river and it brings supplies to you, right? Again, if we were looking at money as strictly a tool, I would say it would be just as good as like a river, all right? So the flow of money really attracts opportunity. We just have to be clear about what we want, right? And line up our intentions, our goals with our use of resources, with that money. Okay. And if we were able to direct a river in the right direction and put the supplies on it, right, we'd be able to get to that end goal and probably pretty quickly. And if we were to direct water to, an area that needed it, right, we would be able to grow plants, vegetation, right? So just we can create by using money. It's the same thing. Now, the outflow of money is just as important as the inflow. Right? It can't just be all about getting money. We actually have to spend money. If we don't, other problems can happen. So we just have to be very clear about how we're going to use money, right? And what that end result needs to be. Right, I was actually explaining this concept to my kiddos. Remember, I have 8 kids, so these were the youngest ones. They're just now learning about money. And we had gone to a farmer's market and we had gone to Target right at the same amount of time, right? Like right in the same afternoon. And I was able to clearly show them that their flow of money in a smaller business had a more direct path to supporting that business as opposed to something that was much bigger, right? Like the control of how they spend their money, the outflow, can be done in a manner that can be directly aligned with one's goals or intentions. You just have to be really intentional about it, right? So, what are those goals? What are you trying to achieve? Now, in our little case study where we were talking about the boutique marketing firm, remember? I believe her name was Monica. Monica in the boutique firm, she was spending money on things she wasn't utilizing. There was a disconnect of that outflowing money, which also made a disconnect to her inflowing money. They're actually part of the same problem, even though they're resulting in two different ways. So if you go back into your business and start looking at how you're spending money, and this could be your business or even in your personal life, right? And if you start seeing spending of money that's in disconnect with your values, or actually even making money that's in disconnect to your values, that can have a big impact. It mucks up the system, right? Big impact on what you're able to achieve overall. All right, now we're going to dive into the concept of money being a tool, right? It's just a tool. It measures stuff, right? It measures value. It measures, well, all kinds of things. But let's think about this a little bit more as far as what you can do with money. All right, so money is just a human-made tool. Right, there are studies where they have taken to this island where there are primates on it, a certain type of monkey, and they have taught the monkey to barter with food. In fact, I believe it was grapes. Grapes became money to these little families of monkeys, right? And so they have like taken this concept of trading and then learning how to increase value with those grapes, right? This is a tool. It is not something that we are essentially born with. And what we've done with this tool is we've somehow bestowed to it this power. Okay, right? Those monkeys that have a lot of grapes, they are super happy to have a lot of grapes and they are very powerful and they take advantage of other things, right? It is not even just human, it is just part of what happens in life when one has more resources than the other. So when we have this tool, we instill it with the power to give us happiness, the power for love, the power for safety, self-value, right? This is not reality, but this is what we have really given power of money over us, right? There's no other tool that has this much control over humanity. Zero, right? Maybe a nuclear bomb if we were to, but we're not floating that today. All right. So the goal is to understand how to better use this money tool because at the end of the day, it just is that. It is a tool, it's nothing more. Right. So I'm going to give you some practical steps or tips on being able to understand this money tool better. Okay? So this is, if you have notes, this is where you would write down your notes. Right? You want to examine your current money habits, right? Remember, you can play the Monopoly game. You learn really quickly where you start to get uncomfortable, right? But ask yourself, does your use of money align with your values or missions and your vision? You can take this down into your business. You can look at your profit and loss statement or income statement. Look at your expenses. Are all those in line with your mission and vision? You know, challenge yourself there. Are there things that you should be spending money on that you're not? Okay, maybe that's part of that bigger vision. Are there things that you're spending money that you shouldn't? So it's all very interesting, right? So example, there's a personal support. Oh, I support small businesses, right? So remember the farmers market and Target? And I go out of my way to shop small because I feel like I can have an impact. And I do. And I express that to everybody. And so that is something that aligns in with me. Now, if you caught me in Walmart, it would be rare, okay? Like, I'm not saying anything against Walmart folks, but I would much rather go to a small business owner and be able to support them directly than to run to a giant retail chain, right? My values aren't supported there. Right, so I want you to go ahead and remove any use of money that's not aligning to your values, mission, and vision. Now that is tough, okay, because you'd be amazed at what you find when you do this type of audit, right? But you do want to make sure that you are in line fully with what you're trying to achieve. And money is an easy way to gauge that. Okay, so that's step one. All right, step two, right, I want you to make the changes and replace relationships and activities to improve your money flow. Ooh, right? So remember our little example there, Monica with the boutique firm? She had that relationship that wasn't in line with her mission and vision. And remember that relationship made her feel bad, right? She didn't like that relationship, but she felt like she was stuck to it. And they were demanding, and that is not going to be a good flow of money for her. She's not ever going to be able to achieve what she really wants to achieve if she's constantly being diverted off track. And so examine what's important, right? And start directing your flow of money, right? And then your inflow and your outflow in an area that is going to be more important to you, away from areas that are less important. Get back in line, right? And so look at the activities and those relationships that are causing that. Step three is pretty simple. Money needs to flow. You cannot hoard it, okay? So pooled money, guess what? Just like a river or a lake or a pool, like that becomes stagnant, right? People that have tons of wealth that don't spend it, you've heard stories, right? Like those trust fund babies, like they have huge problems. There's horrible things happening. That is a stagnant pool of money. You don't want to be attached to it. Problems come out, right? And then no flow, if you have no money coming in, that creates a drought, right? Nobody can live off of that, right? Nothing can grow from that. And then too much flow, well, that becomes a raging river or a flood, right? And everything goes down if too much money comes too quickly. So respect the flow and know that money needs to flow in and out. You're the one that's directing that flow. So use it for the highest use. Make sure that you're achieving your mission and vision, right? And more importantly, I can't even say it. I'm a big fan of planning money use, forecasting your needs, right? And making sure you keep the proper flow of money. If you can understand what you're going to need ahead of that bin, right? You'll be able to go ahead and plan and get around it. Okay, there's a fourth, reflection. You can't learn or get better at anything if you don't examine it and reflect on it. So examine your money, your activities creating it, right? Are you happy with those? Do you need to have more activity? Do you need to have less, more quality potentially, right? And then look at how you're spending your money. What's happening with the activities around spending it? Are you spending too much? Are you spending too little? Are they directed in the right areas? Right? You just need to make sure that those spending activities are in line with your goals and that you're making those changes as they happen. All right, make those changes quickly. When you don't make changes quickly, you have that lag time, and that can jeopardize the success of the mission or vision. Right? If the money flow is no longer benefiting that mission and vision, change your relationships. Right? It's that easy. It's about getting back to money management. Right? So we've gone through a gamut of resources, self-examination, right? But it all comes back to that becoming your own money expert and managing your own money for success. All right, so let's talk about becoming your own money expert, right? Richard Branson was not born overnight. Elon Musk was not born overnight. Tony Robbins was not born overnight. Right? What you're seeing are individuals that have gotten really in tune with their mission and vision, right? And they have made mistakes just like any other human, and they turn around and they repivot, restructure, but they are very, very good at being clear at communicating and understanding what they're trying to create. All right, becoming your own money expert takes that type of vision. So money success doesn't come from the outside. All right, success and confidence developed internally as we master our communication and our goals. Right, you have to spend time defining your mission and vision, right, and accomplishing what is achievable within this priority and time frame. You do not need a finance degree to be a money expert, okay? Now, I have a business degree, right? And I didn't start off that way. I love business, right? But you don't need a finance degree to be good with money, right? Kids understand the value of money. We have had access to money and these tools for a long time, pretty much our whole lives, right? You are just as good at being a money expert as anybody else. But remember, it's you being in control over your particular project and your mission and vision. So really, I'd argue that nobody can be a better expert than you because nobody else understands what you're trying to create better than yourself. So do not let money use you, right? Because again, letting it use you means that you're overcome with fear and doubt and uncertainty, and you're really stopped from being able to go after and achieve your goals, right? If you use money through a very conscious effort, knowing what your limitations are, but understanding the good money habits, right? Those good beliefs, you can actually accomplish the mission and vision and reach the end goal because success is not defined as having tons of money in the account. Remember? Because if you have tons of money sitting in the account, what happens? It becomes stagnant, right? Money needs to flow. So by achieving the mission and vision and allowing for that to flow in a good manner, you actually become more successful. All right, so my name is Rebecca Schultz. I'm the founder and executive loan consultant for CenterLock. If you have questions about the presentation, I'm super happy to answer them. You can always reach out to me. All right, so there's my email contact information. But outside of that, I really want to hear what you guys have to say. Oh, sorry. I really want to hear what you guys have to say.
Well, Rebecca, I can honestly tell you that I've never really thought of money like that. I think it's because, like we discussed, uh, how I grew up, the people that I grew up with, and the fact that they did go through the Depression. So their thought process was we have to hold on to it so that we don't lose it again.
Makes
And
sense.
I also think that because of that, that had an impact on how they actually handled their money, in that it goes into a savings account or checking account. There's no investment going on. So
Exactly.
um, if anybody has any questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat box. And and we get a response, wow, not the direction I thought this would go. This is awesome information.
Thank you. I know. See, I warned you. It's more of like a therapist. You really have to understand what's going on because nobody else can really direct you. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like we are constantly told from an early age we need some expert that's going to tell us how to run everything. But at the end of the day, really, that expert is only looking at a shadow and trying to understand what you want to achieve and where you want to go.
Mm-hmm.
And you're the one driving it, right? So it's almost like asking somebody who's not a mechanic to fix your engine. Like that wouldn't work. It never works. You'll never end up where you want to be, really.
And that reminds me of an episode of The Big Bang Theory when the car stops running and all of these scientists look at each other and said, anybody understand about how to fix a car? Well, yeah, we understand. We understand. Can you fix the car? Oh, no, 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 can't do that. So if we have any questions, oh, here they come. Um, my parents grew up during World War II, and they were very frugal with everything when I was a child. So yeah, I understand that completely. Um, when we're saving money for something specific, how do we control the urge not to spend on anything else? Even if we need to move the money, uh, keep it flowing. How do we, got any insight on that?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so when you know that you're saving for that goal, all right, let's say it's a vacation. Let's say it's something fun, all right? You want to
Mhm.
go on that vacation. Because it is your mission and your vision that you're going on that vacation, you really don't have to stress too much, right? Unless something came up that was outside of your control, like your car did break. You're going for that vacation, right? But now you have a choice. Either you get to work to keep going, right? Or you don't. Like I could see having to spend money on necessities being somewhat of a sidetrack. But if you are still in line with the mission and vision, what you're wanting to do, that vacation to Hawaii is that important to you, it's far less likely that you're going to go and spend the money in a manner that's not going to be directed towards that mission and vision. I mean, it just is. Um, I've been doing this for a couple of years on my myself, right? It is so easy to talk myself out of going shopping. I'm just going to tell you, because all I have to do is think about that mission and vision and how much I want it, right? And it just all comes together. It's the unexamined thoughts or desires or needs, right? And believe me, I get that. I feel like our society is really good at marketing to our impulses, as to our intentions, what we need, right? What we want to achieve, is we have to bat those away, but it's just staying focused as to we want to achieve. Now, for me, like I could go into Target and see a bunch of cute little things, right? But at the end of the day, that desire for me to have an impact and help somebody else, right? That ultimately, I mean, that's a real hard value of mine. So it's easy to be intentional in that way.
I will walk around a store with an armful of stuff and then go put it back. If I walk around long enough, I will go put it back. So it upsets my children, but hey. Let's see, you were talking about a money tool. Were you meaning money as a tool, or do you have a particular money tool?
Yeah, so money as a tool, right? Money as a tool. Money is just a tool. It's just something that we exchange for something else. And
Mhm.
believe me, money is going to look far different over the next decade than it has historically. We've got Bitcoin, Litecoin, Dogcoin. Oh my goodness, right? The world is transforming before our very eyes. And so money is more of a concept that's going to change and evolve just as humanity changes and evolves, right?
Mhm.
What won't change is what we're willing to give or exchange, like this kind of value proposition. And as long as we're keeping clear on the fact that that dollar bill or $50 bill has no power over us, right? It really doesn't. That we, in fact, are the one that has power over it and how we direct that, right? Then we start taking back our power over money, right? Which again is just a tool. We start taking back the tool and we start directing it and using it in a manner that's going to allow for the end result to happen. I think of it nothing different from a hammer, right? I can't use something else to really hammer that nail, but I got to use the hammer. It's how hard I hammer, like where do I direct that nail, right? You get my drift. It is a tool.
Okay, if anyone has any questions that just automatically come to mind, please go ahead and put them in the chat box. And I'm going to share my screen real quick. Okay. Rebecca, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us today, for always being there, always having the level head and the information, the good information about finances for small businesses. I want to thank everyone else for joining us. One thing I forgot to mention, today is National Lollipop Day. So go celebrate. On your screen is our upcoming webinars. We are very excited about our webinar series coming up. We've got Lorna Kibbe coming back tomorrow, The Key to Success, How to Get Along with People, All People. Oh, merciful heavens, I need that. On August 3rd, oh, it looks like we're taking a week off here. On August 3rd, we've got Marcia Hudson joining us talking about networking online and offline beyond the pandemic. That's a skill that I think we're all going to have to actually hone to be able to exist, because the old networking at the chamber meetings and at the evening events and all that, that's changing because of the pandemic. Ashley Cook, a new presenter, is joining us for What is Copy and Why You Need It to Grow. And then Marcia Back, How to Manage Your Social Media Strategy. And then Rebecca is going to continue this money and small business series with several different webinars. So on the 17th of August, which appears to be a doubleheader that day, Money Smart Startup Businesses Part 1. So always remember, be checking our webinar. In fact, you can use the QR code up at the top right-hand corner, and that will take you exactly to our website. And there you can register for the webinars. You can get contact information, schedule an appointment with an advisor. You can also get all kinds of resources for small business owners. And this afternoon, I would like to thank our benefactors, the Small Business Administration, the State of Texas, North Texas SBDC Regional Office in Dallas, North Central Texas College. If it wasn't for them, we would not be able to provide our resources and events like this webinar to you at no cost. Thank you all for joining today. Come back tomorrow for Lorna Kibbe. She's always good. And we look forward to seeing you then. Thank you all. And
Thank you.
we'll see you tomorrow.